Okay, good afternoon. So this afternoon we are moving into the major part of our class, English 1A class. The first major part was the critical thinking skills and the critical writing skills. And right after the midterm, now we're moving into the second part of the class, and this is writing argumentative essays with using some research. Now that is a great word, research. Suddenly, when you mentioned that you had to incorporate research or reliable research sources in your essay, suddenly a whole new can of worms is open. It's actually a great can is open too. Like it's actually you have what millions and millions and billions of sources available to you to increase your knowledge. Yet there's also many dangers and obstacles and things you have to watch out when you do research. So today I'd like to introduce a little bit about the process of research in your essay. The benefits of research are many. Of course, you can expand your knowledge. You can actually get new current knowledge and really expand your knowledge base, and also use reliable research information to learn and also incorporate your essay to use as part of your own arguments to convince your readers or other people in the world about what you're trying to prove, or to basically go along with the way that you're trying to propose. So research has a lot of great benefits. It also increases your reading skills, of course, because you'll be reading, especially when you read reliable articles by professors and experts in the field, you're actually going to get a lot of new knowledge, new words. So it'll expand your vocabulary, your knowledge, your concepts. You'll learn new things. It'll open up your mind. It's also a great opportunity for you to be a critical thinker, because you always want to be critical. Even with reliable research, you still want to have your own opinion or reaction to it. So the benefits of research are many, yet there's also pratfalls too, right? Because in terms of research, and with that in mind, let's go back to the old way of doing research, introduce you to the old way and how lucky we are today. However, with that luck comes a lot of obstacles and pratfalls, or little dangers. In the old way, basically in the printed world of the old, the knowledge was much more limited, basically to basically books or a lot of old school type forms of research. So you basically had say if you had to do a paper where your teacher required you to at least incorporate a few resource sources into your argumentative essay, you had to spend maybe at least a few hours or even a day to set aside to go to the library, your college library or your public library, and basically look for books. You would go to the card catalog, which is basically like a little drawer, and you actually look up books by author. You can look it up by author. You can look it up by subject or topic or things like that. So basically, it wasn't even electronic. It was basically a manual card catalog with musty old index cards. Eventually, they started moving the card catalogs to electronic, right? Where nowadays you can actually search electronically by author and topic and things like that, or by magazine or by book title and things like that. So basically, once you did that, you had to go through the library shelves and find books, old books, very reliable books, published books, great books, a lot of great articles or journal articles that are in hard copy, that only the university, you can only find it at the university, but you had to go to the magazine racks and actually find those articles after you looked through the card catalog. There's also things called college indexes, or basically article indexes or magazine indexes, where you can look up article titles and authors by year, like in the year 1973, if you want to look up to us what would happen in terms of discovering new planets or new stars. You can actually look through these things called these hardcover books that had called magazine indexes, where you actually can look up articles, titles, and then find out what magazine published this article, who his author was, what the article is about, and things like that, and then go to the magazine shelves and search for those articles. You can also even go to the media room, where there are microfilms. You had to use like an instrument where you actually turn the reel like a film reel, and you can see microfilms or microfiche, right? Or it's called microfiche and microfilms, where you actually had to turn the knob and you actually had these articles in film format, right? Or even like slide or film format, things like that. So that's really old school. That's back to the days of the 8-track tapes, records, LP records, right? The cassette tapes, the days when your parents or grandparents had all that old media. People had to do that, right? It took much longer time. So you acquainted yourself, with the musty smell of the library, right? You actually enjoyed yourself, and you kind of lost yourself amongst the books. You actually read books, and you took notes on little index cards on your notebook. You use little index cards to take notes to show where your source was, to show what article was, what were you quoting, to make sure that you're going to properly credit the author later on. So that was old school library research, right? It was a lot of things of the old days, where you had to talk to the librarian, had a relationship with the librarian, and discussing things of that. Now we're into the new days, right? Where basically this wide knowledge, published books, is now expanded to a universe of not only published books, the same books and published articles too, but also electronic sources, right? Or things on the internet, even wider, right? The wide world of the internet, where the millions and millions of sources became many, many billions of sources. So that's great, right? So the students would tell me, oh yeah, with one click of the button, I actually did my research for the day. I'm already finished with my research, my essay, Mr. Chan or Professor Chan, right? They would tell me that, and I would go, oh, no, that's great. But then I would kind of say, well, if I require you to have two sources, were those articles really reliable, right? Are they really college quality articles? I was wondering why? Because the internet had, among the millions and millions of good stuff that you could find, there was also millions and millions of junk, like personal blogs, personal diaries, people just posting stuff that are not really published. They're just posting opinions with no support, posting propaganda, trying to sell you stuff, right? In-N-Out Burger would publish a site. Someone would write how great In-N-Out Burger was, how nutritious it was, and then we would all believe that person because they had a great picture of themselves, or they seem to be expert. Yet that person was not a nutrition expert. So they didn't really know about In-N-Out Burger, right? But yeah, now we have all this wide world of internet with all this stuff out there. And the question is, even though internet research is very easy and it's fun too, you can ask questions like who is Joe Biden? You can ask questions. You can find all the person like who is Joe Biden's wife? Who is Joe Biden? What school did he go to? You can ask all these questions. Or what policies would Joe Biden do? What will he do with the coronavirus? You can ask all these questions. You will get easy answers, right? Very quick answers to all your stuff like what is a recipe to bake tiramisu? Like things like that. Just anything. How many championships has LeBron James? How tall is Steph Curry? All these random questions you could ask, right? It's all really at your fingertips, whereas someone had to spend literally hours before to find all this stuff. Now we're a lot faster, right? And we're smarter, right? We're faster and smarter and more efficient, right? But the problem is a lot of this research is all fun stuff, but a lot of it's not really reliable. It's not really college quality. The authors are not really reliable. They don't really have credentials to write this. The organizations are trying to sell you or sell propaganda. They're trying to harm you with harmful ideas, right? There might be the Ku Klux Klan site trying to imitate themselves as a civil rights site, but they're really the Ku Klux Klan organization. So there's all these dangers and pratfalls. There's all this junk and gossip and celebrity stuff, right? There's all this junk that we all think is real news, yet all this news here that he gives is not really reliable. They didn't really check their facts right. It's not fact verified, right? Whereas in the past, magazine editors and book editors would painstakingly verify the facts and spend lots of money to publish this stuff, right? But now we have these articles and stuff there that's not reliable. But how do we wade through? Google is still great, right? Nonetheless, Google is really great. However, if you do go on Google, in the real world is right. The academic world will be, let me just turn in a couple of sources on Google. Like say if you're doing your essay the last minute, 30 minutes before the deadline, you could just email the essay to me as a teacher, right? Say, Mr. Chan, he's a teacher. He'll go ahead and check to see the sources are reliable, right? But is that the really real world where you're depending on your teacher to grade you and say, this source is reliable, not reliable, and you really just spent half an hour just finding the first source or the first quote that fit your essay? No, you actually had to really write a great quality essay. And you are accountable for your sources. You're accountable because you are graded. The teacher, the professor will be grading you on the quality of your sources, and you spent the proper time finding valid and reliable sources and accurate sources and things like that. So that's a whole problem, right? You actually had to find the good stuff in your current research, right? There's millions and millions of stuff, yet you had to find the good stuff. So Google is great, right? Yeah, mind you, Google, we'll use Google forever. They're really great. However, Google's criteria in terms of like things popping up, when you do search on Google, the things that pop up are depend on what Google's criteria is, right? The first article that pop up they may consider it most relevant for your topic, yet their criteria or the things they use, such as how many times does the word immigration pop up in an article, their criteria is not necessarily the academic criteria that we see, the academic evaluation criteria. So we had to basically seek articles that are published by professors, that are published by schools, that are published by scientists or actually experts, reliable, verified experts are in the field, or people who check their facts, right? Like organizations who actually painstakingly check their facts and do things in an objective manner. That's what we had to do with current research, right? Using your current research. And that's where, so basically, if you do Google search, by all means, if you do use a Google article, if you want to use additional, and I mind you, it would be additional Google article in your essay that are not in the library database, you can do that, yet you will be accountable for reliability. And basically in the handouts, they have this thing called the Web evaluation checklist, right? Where you actually can evaluate the reliability of an article, right? You have to see who's the author, what's their background, what are their qualifications to write on the subjects, who's the author being paid by, what organization is paid by the author. Does that make the author objective or biased? What is the organization itself? Is it a .com, a business trying to sell you something? Is it .org? Is it a private company? Even if it's a nonprofit, is that nonprofit trying to sell you an idea? And do they present it in an objective way? You know, the organization can be biased, like a nonprofit, they can be biased. We understand a lot of people are biased, but they have to be objective. They have to back up their facts with their research, and they also have to present things in an objective manner, give you reliable facts that are verified, things like that. They had to write in a scholarly way, right? So again, everyone can have an opinion, but it just depends on how they present their opinions and how they back up their opinions is what's key, just like you and your essay, right? We all have opinions, right? We're all entitled to that, but we had to really convince the reader that we're right by backing up in a proper and academic way. So that's what happened there. So basically, anytime you do a Google article without going into our library database, you'll have to do a web evaluation checklist or a criteria checklist where you basically evaluate the author, you evaluate the organization, you evaluate the nature of the website itself. When was it last updated? What are the what is it grammatically correct? Do the links work, right? Do they have a bibliography? Do they actually show you where their facts came from or where their sources came from? Is information projective and objective or biased way? Are the facts verified? Things like that. We also went through the URL of the site too. I think I mentioned that briefly just a few seconds ago, right? Is it a .com? Is it a personal blog, right? Does it have a university extension? Yet does that really mean it's by a professor, or is it just by a student or someone in or affiliated university who didn't really publish the work? So you had to look at it that way. .org, .com, .net is a news organization. Even government agencies can be biased too, right? They may hide their information or not present it in a way that's hard to find, right? So you had to kind of search for those hidden biases too. But anyway, we'll talk more about the evaluation criteria in the future. But anytime you do Google search in your brain, you have to personally hold yourself accountable and know the criteria, right? Thankfully, the librarians have prepared this web evaluation checklist, which they show the common criteria, which I mentioned some of them. In terms of information reliability, valid, accurate information. Is it college quality? Is it quote appropriate for you to use in your essay? Can you critically discuss that quote, right? Is it reliable enough where you can just put in your essay and critically incorporate and discuss it in your essay? So basically, you have to do a web evaluation criteria checklist. I would probably ask you to do one in an upcoming homework, right, for your internet article just to see how it is. But yeah, I may be the last person to ask you to do in writing, or you just may take a library course where they ask you. However, anytime you do a research essay in the future, if you're going to use something for the internet, you're going to have to put these criteria in your head. You're going to have to have an idea what the criteria are and be able to judge quickly and efficiently, but in a methodical way, whether the article you used is valid or basically appropriate for your essay. Because, again, I repeat, you are accountable. And at the end of the day, you are accountable for the quality of your essays, not your teacher. The teacher just grades you. In the real world, there's a lot of tutors and teachers, librarians. They can all help you, and everyone's great. But in the real world, if you're out in this Facebook or the social media and someone doesn't believe you, you are accountable for your sources. You're going to have to convince the reader or that intelligent other person who's objecting to you or wondering about whether you're right or wrong about the reliability of your sources. So it's basically you're going to be responsible in the future for your sources, and only you and the professor or other people who read your essay would know kind of an idea of how hard or how intellectual you are, or really how hard you work by checking out your source. Well, look, I go, oh, okay. Did my student John Johnson, did he or Joanne Johnson, did he or she really spend the time of the essay giving me a good source, or they just did a 1-minute search on Google, right? I want to see that. Okay. So basically, you have to document your sources using your essay in a great way and rely on it. Basically document the sources and cite your information to show that you're getting the source from somewhere and critically discuss that. So that is basically an introduction to research, and that's where library databases come in, which is going to be our next subject. Is basically libraries databases are actually like filtered internet. These are databases, filtered databases that universities hire database companies to basically manage these databases. So they're updated day by day. It is the internet. They're actually connected to the internet. These are internet articles, but it's a filtered database where the articles are reliable. Articles are 100% reliable, valid, and accurate, yet you just had to see whether it fits your essay. It works well with your essay, but these are reliable published articles that have bibliographies, that have their sources back up, their facts are verified, the sources and organizations are all reliable and accurate. They may have opinions, but they basically back up their data in a very academic way. And they're also written a lot of times by professors, and they're only sold to the schools, right? So in a way, if you go to Google, you may not be able to find some of these articles, like this article from the Harvard Business Review. You may not be able to find it in the Google, or Google may make you, Google Scholar may make you pay for the article, right? You basically just end up going back to the database. But you as a paying student will have access to this database with your name and logging in with your ID number, and you'll be able to do a search and basically use this database, because these are basically academic articles, academic and published articles that database is. So just think of the databases as this really smaller field of what millions of sources, and not as many as Google. Not as fun too, right? Because you don't have all the entertainment stuff. You don't have all of the great funny pictures or fun. So it's not as Google, not as fun, not as accessible as Google, but usually used by a lot of students and professors and know for reliable, accurate, college quality research. So that's basically essentially your databases. And to introduce you to the database, I'm going to have you in your essay, in your draft, try to find what article that relates to your topic and incorporate that into your essay as part of your argument, right? So it shouldn't be too bad. It should take, once you're able to log in and explore the databases, just explore a couple of the first two databases, the general databases, you should be able to get familiar with the site, get more familiar, spend about 15 minutes to half hour, and you'll find an article. I'm pretty sure you'll find an article pretty fast, but don't give up quickly. Just use similar terms, similar words and phrases that relate to your topic, like standardized tests. Another similar word would be mandatory tests, or actually placement tests, things like that. So you can explore a little bit about your using different terms. So don't give up. Just you have to play around with a little bit, but you'll find great articles that relate. And then once you find those candidates, then you have to kind of review or skim through carefully some of these articles to kind of see if that's what you're looking for. And open your essays, do your essays, and research with an open mind. Just don't say, I'm going to prove my thesis statement with my essay too, right? Just don't say, I already made up my mind. Be open-minded. Like you may encounter stuff that disagree with you, right? One student said, oh, I really hate essays with research because there's also all this contradicting information and that confuses me. Well, that's the reality, right? You're also going to get people who believe one way, people who believe the other way, and yet you're going to have to sort through that in a critical manner and see which information is, which argument is the most convincing, and make that judgment, right? And of course, there could be a mixed view where there's really no right or wrong answer, but you yourself have to kind of wade through all this research data. It's up to you, because there's always contradictory information in life. Okay, so I posted a little in attachments. There's procedures how to get into the database. I also posted a little write-up today, just a few minutes ago, about how to get in the databases. Please text me, call me, email me with questions you have trouble getting in there or exploring, because it's just with any new thing, it may seem hard at first, not as fun as Google, not as fun as Twitter, not as fun as Instagram, all that, not as fun as Facebook, yet it's still a great way to do academic research. And the great students find a way, like when they go to college, when they sit in the library, they're actually going through the databases. They're renting a laptop, they have the Wi-Fi access from the library, and they're sitting there, or at home, because you can access these from home. They're actually going through these databases and just going through it as a first way, right? And there's anything I want you to take from the class is basically go to the databases first, right? Kind of avoid that temptation to go to Google first, because Google will always be there for you. You can always use Google later to supplement your research, but you have to try to get familiar with something that is maybe uncomfortable, a little bit more complicated, but the databases are the great way to go, because it's an academic and scholarly articles, is basically, and we'll talk more about the nature of those articles more as I talk more about research. But right now, that's just a little introduction to research. With research, there's a lot of great possibilities, millions and millions of sources, more than we ever had before, yet there's also dangers and pratfalls, because there's a lot of junk out there too, a lot of dangers, as we know in the real world too. So until then, I'll talk to you later, and good luck in starting your essay and starting your research process.